My name is Eva, I'm 27, and last week, my own father suspended me from our family company until I apologized to my sister. I just stared at him and whispered, "All right." But the next morning, my sister stood there smirking, thinking she had finally broken me, until she saw my empty desk, my resignation letter, and the company lawyer rushing in, pale, begging, "Please tell me you didn't post it." That was the moment my father's proud smile died in front of the entire office. Before I show you how everything exploded after that, make sure you like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Growing up, I was invisible. While my sister Sarah basked in every spotlight my father created for her, I lived in shadows so deep I forgot what warmth felt like. She was his princess, his future CEO, his everything. I was just there. The spare daughter, the one who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. Every report card, every achievement, every moment I thought might finally make him proud. Nothing. Sarah could fail a test and get ice cream. I could win an award and get a nod. The pain of that inequality carved itself so deep into my bones that I stopped expecting fairness. I just worked harder, hoping maybe one day. But hope is a dangerous thing when you're feeding it to someone who sees you as nothing more than background noise. When we both joined the family company after college, I thought things might change. I thought professional merit might speak louder than childhood favoritism. God, I was naive. The same patterns followed us into those corporate halls. Sarah got the corner office, the executive meetings, the respect that should have been earned. I got the grunt work, the blame when things went wrong, and the silence when things went right. For 5 years, I swallowed my pride and did the work. I built client relationships, streamlined processes, saved the company millions in operational costs. Sarah showed up late, left early, and somehow got credit for my innovations. The rage I felt watching her present my strategies to the board while I sat in the back, it was eating me alive. If this story is hitting close to home, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not alone in this. 3 weeks ago, everything came to a head. Sarah had been assigned to lead our biggest client acquisition of the year, a contract worth 8 figures. Of course, she immediately dumped the actual work on me while keeping the title and the glory. I spent sleepless nights preparing presentations, analyzing market data, crafting strategies that would secure this deal. The night before the final presentation, I found her in the conference room, deliberately corrupting my files. Not just deleting, corrupting, making it look like I had prepared garbage while keeping clean copies for herself. The cold calculation in her eyes when she saw me. She wasn't even ashamed. She smiled. "Finally ready to learn your place, Eva?" The fury that exploded in my chest was 27 years in the making. I screamed at her, demanded she fix what she'd broken, threatened to expose her sabotage. But Sarah was always 3 steps ahead when it came to manipulation. She ran straight to Daddy's office, tears streaming, claiming I had violently attacked her and destroyed my own work to frame her. When my father called me into his office the next morning, his face was stone cold. No questions about what really happened. No investigation into the timeline, no consideration that his precious Sarah might be lying. Just the verdict. "Apologize to your sister Eva, you're suspended until you do." The words hit me like physical blows. 27 years of being second best crashed down on me in that moment. I looked at this man who was supposed to love me unconditionally, and I saw nothing but disappointment and dismissal. He had already decided I was guilty. He had always decided I was less than. "All right," I whispered. But that "all right" wasn't surrender. It was the sound of something breaking free inside me. The sound of every chain I'd wrapped around myself to stay in his good graces finally snapping. I walked out of that office knowing I would never walk back in as his employee again. That night, I sat in my apartment with a clarity I'd never experienced before. The pain was overwhelming, but underneath it was something else. Relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn love that would never come. I wasn't begging for respect from someone who saw me as expendable. I spent 12 hours preparing my exit. Not just quitting, completely dismantling every connection I'd built with that company. I transferred all my client contacts to my personal files. I documented every project I'd completed that Sarah had taken credit for. I backed up every email, every strategy document, every piece of evidence that showed my true value. And then I wrote my resignation letter. Not a polite, professional goodbye. A surgical dissection of every way that company had failed me, exploited me, and discarded me. I wrote about the favoritism, the stolen credit, the emotional abuse disguised as family dynamics. I wrote my truth in words that burned with 5 years of suppressed rage, but the resignation letter was just the beginning. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been betrayed by family? I'm reading every single one. The next morning, I arrived at the office before anyone else. I packed my personal items, wiped my computer clean, and left my resignation letter in the exact center of my now empty desk. Then I positioned myself in the lobby cafe where I could watch the chaos unfold. Sarah strutted in at 9:15, already an hour late, but glowing with the satisfaction of someone who thought she'd finally put her sister in her place. I watched her walk toward my department, probably planning some smug comment about my absence. The moment she saw my empty desk, her expression shifted. Confusion first, then concern, then panic as she spotted the resignation letter. She grabbed it with shaking hands, and I watched her face drain of color as she read. Other employees were gathering, whispering, pointing at the empty space where I'd worked for 5 years. That's when Marcus, our company lawyer, came sprinting down the hallway. I'd never seen him move faster than a leisurely walk, but he was practically running. He burst into the department, his usually perfect hair disheveled, sweat beading on his forehead. "Where's Eva? Please tell me you didn't let her post it." The confusion on Sarah's face was beautiful. She had no idea what storm was about to hit. While they were panicking over my resignation, I was 3 blocks away at a coffee shop, hitting publish on the most important post I'd ever written. I didn't just quit. I told my story. Every detail, backed up with screenshots, emails, and documentation. The nepotism, the stolen credit, the systematic destruction of my confidence and career. I wrote about growing up as the invisible daughter, about working myself to exhaustion for scraps of recognition, about watching my sabotaging sister get promoted for my achievements. I wrote about the corruption of family businesses that prioritize blood over merit and the cost of staying silent about abuse. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, current and former employees were sharing their own stories of favoritism and dysfunction. Clients were reaching out with concern about the company's integrity. Industry publications picked up the story. My phone was buzzing nonstop, but I turned it off. For the first time in years, the silence felt peaceful instead of lonely. Make sure you're subscribed because what happened next will blow your mind. And drop your location in the comments. I want to see how far this story has reached. By afternoon, the damage was catastrophic. 3 major clients had suspended their contracts pending investigation. The company's stock price dropped 12% in a single day. HR was fielding calls from journalists, investigators, and employment lawyers. My father called an emergency board meeting. I heard from a friend still working there that he looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. His voice was shaking as he tried to explain the misunderstanding with his daughter. But the board wasn't interested in family drama. They were interested in the millions of dollars walking out the door. Sarah was in full panic mode, claiming I was lying, that I was bitter and vindictive. But the evidence I'd posted was irrefutable. Every stolen presentation, every sabotaged project, every moment of credit theft was documented with timestamps and witnesses. The investigation HR launched found even more. Other employees came forward with their own stories about Sarah's behavior. The pattern of incompetence masked by stolen work became undeniable. Within a week, 3 department heads had resigned. 7 key employees handed in their notice. 2 major investors pulled out entirely. The company that had been my father's pride was hemorrhaging from wounds I'd exposed, not created. I didn't celebrate. There was no joy in watching something burn, even when that something had burned me first. But there was satisfaction in knowing the truth was finally visible. The calls from my father started on day 3. Voicemail after voicemail, his voice progressing from anger to bargaining to desperation. He wanted me to come back, to fix what I'd destroyed, to help save the family business. But I was done being his fixer. Done being his scapegoat. Done being the invisible daughter who cleaned up everyone else's messes while getting blamed for the chaos. 6 months later, I'm the lead strategist at our biggest competitor. The clients who followed me have brought in more revenue than I ever generated from my father's company. Former colleagues reach out regularly, telling me I inspired them to finally stand up for themselves. Sarah? She's still there, but her true competence is now on full display. Without my work to steal, her performance speaks for itself. She's been quietly moved to a ceremonial role with no real responsibilities. The golden child has finally been revealed as fool's gold. If my story resonated with you, smash that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Knowing I'm not alone in this makes all the difference. My father sent one final message last month. Not a call, not a voicemail, a text. 3 words. I was wrong. Too little, too late. The damage he allowed Sarah to do, the favoritism he enabled, the daughter he discarded. Those wounds don't heal because someone finally admits what everyone else could see. I don't hate him anymore. Hate requires too much energy, and I'm investing mine in building something better. But forgiveness? That's not something owed to people who only apologize after their choices cost them everything. The invisible daughter finally learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away and let them see what they lost. I didn't destroy my father's company. I just stopped holding it together with my unpaid labor and unacknowledged sacrifice. I stopped being the foundation they built their dysfunction on. And for the first time in my life, I'm not apologizing for taking up space. That's my story. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from, and let me know in the comments. What would you have done? Because sometimes the hardest thing isn't staying and fighting. Sometimes it's having the courage to walk away and let the truth speak for itself.